The communication chamber aboard the Terran Defense Station Meridian fell silent as the holographic projection materialized in the center of the room. Commander Sarah Chen watched as the image solidified into the imposing figure of a Krillian warrior. The alien stood nearly 3 meters tall, its 4 arms crossed in a gesture of supreme arrogance. Crimson scales covered its muscular frame, and twin rows of razor-sharp teeth gleamed as it spoke. "I am War Commander Zethkar of the Krillian Dominion," the projection announced, its voice a deep rumble that seemed to shake the very air. "Your pathetic species has been found guilty of territorial expansion without proper authorization from the Galactic Council. You humans spread like a disease across star systems that do not belong to you." Sarah remained perfectly still, her expression neutral despite the insult. Behind her, the other officers in the room shifted uncomfortably. The Krillians were known throughout the galaxy as one of the most feared warrior races. Their empire had conquered dozens of civilizations over the past 1,000 years. Zethkar continued his speech, pacing back and forth within the confines of the holographic field. "The Council has voted. Your expansion ends today. You will withdraw from all colonies established in the past 50 Earth years and return to your home system. You have 72 hours to comply." One of the junior officers behind Sarah started to speak, but she silenced him with a small gesture. Her dark eyes remained fixed on the alien warrior as she processed the demand. Humanity had worked for decades to establish their colonies. Millions of families had made new homes on distant worlds. The economic and social upheaval of such a withdrawal would be catastrophic. "And if we refuse?" Sarah asked calmly. The Krillian's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Then you will face the consequences. I personally will lead the purge of your insignificant colonies. Your people will learn what happens when they defy the natural order of the galaxy." Sarah nodded slowly. "I see. Well, War Commander, I need to consult with my superiors before giving you an answer. Will you accept our response in 24 hours? Zethkar's 4 eyes narrowed. He had expected fear, pleading, perhaps desperate negotiations. The human's calm demeanor was unexpected. "You have 24 hours. Do not test my patience further." The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in absolute silence. The officers looked to their commander, waiting for orders. Sarah stood motionless for a long moment, her mind racing through possibilities and calculations. "Ma'am?" Lieutenant Morrison ventured. "What are your orders?" Sarah turned to face her team. "Get me Admiral Rodriguez on secure channel, priority alpha clearance, and someone find me everything we have on Krillian military doctrine and fleet compositions." As her staff hurried to comply, Sarah walked to the observation deck overlooking the vast expanse of space. Stars twinkled in the darkness, many of them now home to human colonies. She thought of the families living their lives on those distant worlds, unaware that their entire existence had just been threatened by an alien warlord. The communication system chimed, indicating an incoming transmission from Earth. Admiral Rodriguez's weathered face appeared on the screen, his expression grave. "Commander Chen, I assume you've received the Krillian ultimatum?" "Yes, sir. They want us to abandon all colonies established in the last 50 years. Complete withdrawal to Earth system within 72 hours. The Admiral's jaw tightened. That's completely unacceptable. Those colonies represent the future of our species. We can't just abandon millions of civilians to satisfy some alien's power trip." "I agree, sir. What are your orders?" Rodriguez was quiet for a moment, weighing his words carefully. "Sarah, I'm about to share classified information with you. 3 days ago, we detected massive Krillian fleet movements near our border systems. Intelligence suggests they were planning this move regardless of our response. This ultimatum is just political theater." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "They're planning to attack anyway." That's our assessment. The question is, do we roll over and let them, or do we remind the galaxy why humans have survived every challenge thrown at us? The implication was clear. Sarah had suspected this might be the case, but hearing it confirmed changed everything. Sir, requesting permission to implement Protocol 7. Admiral Rodriguez studied her face through the transmission. Protocol 7 was a contingency plan developed by human military strategists years earlier. It was designed specifically for scenarios where humanity faced an existential threat from a superior force. The protocol was brutal, unconventional, and had never been tested in actual combat. Permission granted, Commander. God help us all. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. She had just been authorized to unleash something the galaxy had never seen before. The Krillians thought they understood human warfare, but they were about to learn a harsh lesson. Sarah activated the internal communication system. All senior staff to the briefing room. Security level black. This is not a drill. Within minutes, her department heads had assembled. The faces around the table represented the best military minds humanity had to offer. These were the officers who had developed new tactics, who had pushed the boundaries of conventional warfare, who had prepared for this day without knowing if it would ever come. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah began, we have just received a declaration of war from the Krillian Dominion. They demand we abandon our colonies or face extermination. Intelligence indicates they plan to attack regardless of our response. The room erupted in voices as officers began discussing defensive strategies and fleet deployments. Sarah let them talk for a moment before raising her hand for silence. We're not going to defend our colonies in the traditional sense, she announced. We're going to do something the Krillians won't expect. We're going to show them exactly what humans are capable of when we're pushed to the edge. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez, the chief tactical officer, leaned forward. Commander, with respect, the Krillians outnumber us 10-1. Their ships are more advanced, their weapons more powerful. A direct confrontation would be suicide. Sarah smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Who said anything about a direct confrontation? We're going to fight this war on our terms, not theirs. She activated the holographic display in the center of the table. A three-dimensional map of local space appeared, showing human colonies, trade routes, and known Krillian positions. The Krillians are warriors, but they're also creatures of habit. They follow ancient codes of honor, established battle formations, traditional tactics. They expect their enemies to meet them in open battle, fleet against fleet. The officers studied the display as Sarah highlighted various strategic points. But we're not going to give them the war they expect. We're going to give them the war they can't win. Every human colony has been preparing for this possibility. Every civilian has been trained. Every world knows what to do when the time comes. Commander Price from the Intelligence Division spoke up. You're talking about guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale. Exactly. The Krillians want to conquer our worlds. Let them try. They'll find that every human they face is a potential enemy. Every city could hide a resistance cell. Every civilian might be carrying explosives. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just military strategy. This was total war. Sarah continued her explanation, outlining the various phases of Protocol 7. The plan was comprehensive, covering everything from initial resistance to long-term insurgency operations. But there's more, Sarah said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. We're going to take the fight to them as well, not to their fleets, not to their military installations, but to their home worlds. We're going to show them that declaring war on humanity means every Krillian civilian becomes a target. Lieutenant Morrison looked uncomfortable. Commander, attacking civilian populations violates the Geneva Conventions and the Galactic Warfare Accords. Sarah's expression hardened. The Krillians just threatened to exterminate our colonies. That includes women, children, elderly civilians who've never held a weapon in their lives. They want to play by those rules. We'll show them how the game is really played. The briefing continued for hours as Sarah outlined the specific operations each department would oversee. Communication networks that would coordinate resistance activities across dozens of worlds. Supply chains that would keep weapons and equipment flowing to civilian fighters. Intelligence operations that would identify high-value Krillian targets for elimination. As the meeting concluded, Sarah looked around the table one final time. Remember, once we implement Protocol 7, there's no going back. We'll be fighting a war the galaxy has never seen before. A war where every human is a soldier and every world is a battlefield. The officers filed out, each carrying orders that would reshape the nature of warfare itself. Sarah remained behind, staring at the holographic map. In 24 hours, she would need to give the Krillians their answer, but first, she had preparations to make. Sarah opened a secure channel to Marine Colonel Jake Reaper Sullivan on the surface of New Babylon, one of humanity's most important colony worlds. Sullivan's scarred face appeared on the screen, his intense blue eyes reflecting years of combat experience. "Colonel, we're implementing Protocol 7. You know what that means." Sullivan's expression didn't change, but Sarah could see the determination in his eyes. "Understood, Commander. My Marines are ready. When do we start?" "The moment the Krillians make their first move. And Colonel, ma'am, show them why they should have left us alone." The transmission ended, and Sarah began composing humanity's response to the Krillian ultimatum. It would be simple, direct, and would mark the beginning of a war unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. 24 hours later, Sarah stood once again in the communication chamber as Zethkar's holographic image materialized. The Krillian warrior looked expectant, clearly anticipating humanity's surrender. "War Commander," Sarah said, her voice steady and calm, "I have humanity's response to your ultimatum." Zethkar's mandibles clicked impatiently. "Speak quickly, human. My fleets are already moving into position." Sarah looked directly into the alien's 4 eyes as she delivered humanity's answer. "We refuse your demand. Our colonies will remain exactly where they are. If you want to take them, you're welcome to try." The attack came at dawn on New Babylon, just as the twin suns painted the sky in shades of amber and gold. Colonel Jake Sullivan watched from his command bunker as the Krillian invasion fleet descended through the atmosphere like metal thunderclouds. Their ships were massive, each one bristling with enough firepower to level a city. "Contact all units," Sullivan ordered into his communicator. "Phase 1 is now active. Repeat, Phase 1 is active." Across the colony world, the message spread through hidden networks. In homes and businesses, ordinary civilians received the signal they had trained for but hoped would never come. Teachers put down their books, shopkeepers closed their stores, and farmers left their fields. Within minutes, New Babylon's population of 2 million had vanished from the streets. The Krillian dropships landed in the main plaza of Capital City, expecting to find crowds of terrified humans waiting to surrender. Instead, they found empty streets and abandoned buildings. The silence was eerie, broken only by the distant sound of wind blowing through deserted corridors. War Commander Zethkar emerged from his command vessel, his crimson scales gleaming in the morning light. Behind him marched 1,000 elite Krillian warriors, their weapons ready for the slaughter they had been promised. These were veterans of dozens of campaigns, soldiers who had crushed entire civilizations beneath their boots. "Where are the humans?" demanded Captain Veltar, Zethkar's second-in-command. "Our intelligence indicated this city housed 500,000 inhabitants." Zethkar scanned the empty plaza, his 4 eyes searching for any sign of movement. Something was wrong. In every previous conquest, there had been crowds of desperate civilians begging for mercy, or at least bodies of those who had tried to resist. This complete absence of life was unsettling. "Spread out," Zethkar ordered. "Search every building. Find the humans." The Krillian forces advanced into the city, breaking into smaller groups as they investigated the abandoned structures. They found evidence of recent habitation everywhere. Meals left half-finished on tables, personal belongings scattered as if their owners had left in a hurry, children's toys abandoned in the streets. But no humans. What they didn't notice were the subtle modifications that had been made to the city over the past several years. Hidden cameras tracked their movements from concealed positions. Pressure sensors in the streets recorded exactly where they stepped. Motion detectors cataloged their patrol routes and timing. In his underground command center, Sullivan watched it all on multiple screens. The bunker was located 5 miles beneath the city, carved into solid bedrock and shielded against all known detection methods. Around him, 50 of the most experienced Marines in human space monitored the Krillian movements with professional calm. "They're moving into the government district," reported Sergeant Chen, a demolitions expert whose fingers danced across her control panel. "Right on schedule." Sullivan nodded. The Krillians were predictable. They always seized government buildings first, believing that controlling official structures would give them authority over the population. They had no understanding of how human resistance networks actually functioned. "Detonate charges 1 through 15, Sullivan ordered. The explosions began in sequence, each one precisely timed and placed. The Krillian advance units had just entered the government complex when the ground beneath them erupted in fire and debris. The buildings had been rigged months earlier, every structural weakness mapped and exploited. The blast wave shattered windows for blocks around as the complex collapsed into rubble. Of the 200 Krillians who had entered the area, none survived. The rest of the invasion force watched in shock as their comrades simply vanished in a cloud of dust and flame. But the explosions were just the beginning. As the Krillians regrouped and tried to establish a perimeter, the real attack commenced. From sewers and maintenance tunnels, from rooftops and basement windows, human fighters emerged like ghosts. They struck fast and hard, then disappeared before the enemy could respond. Maria Santos had been a school teacher before the war. Now she crouched behind a pile of rubble, a rocket launcher balanced on her shoulder. She had practiced this shot 100 times in simulation, and her target was perfect. A Krillian transport hovering 50 meters away, its pilot scanning the area for threats. The rocket streaked across the open space and struck the transport's engine. The vehicle spun out of control and crashed into a nearby building, adding to the growing column of smoke rising from the city. Maria was already running before the wreckage hit the ground, following the escape route she had memorized. Behind her, Krillian warriors converged on her firing position, but found only empty space and the lingering smell of rocket propellant. This scene repeated itself across the city. Humans attacked from unexpected angles, using weapons that appeared to come from nowhere, then vanished back into the urban maze they knew better than any invader ever could. Zethkar's communicator crackled with reports from his scattered units. "Command, we're taking heavy casualties in Sector 7. Request reinforcements." "Command, our supply convoy has been destroyed. We need immediate resupply." "Command, we've lost contact with the advance patrol. Last known position was the industrial district." The war commander felt something he had rarely experienced in his long military career. Uncertainty. This wasn't how conquests were supposed to proceed. Where was the enemy army? Where were the defensive positions his forces could assault? How do you fight an enemy you can't see? "All units, fall back to the landing zone," Zethkar commanded. "Establish a defensive perimeter and call for orbital bombardment of the surrounding areas." But as his forces attempted to withdraw, they found their retreat cut off. The humans had used the time during the initial assault to position themselves between the Krillians and their landing ships. What had started as an invasion had become a trap. In the underground command center, Sullivan smiled grimly as he watched the enemy's confusion. "Phase 2. He announced. "Time to introduce our guests to some of our local wildlife." The signal went out to teams positioned throughout the city's underground network. Within minutes, the real nightmare began for the Krillian forces. Humans had always been exceptional at domesticating and training other species. Dogs had been their companions for millennia, but on New Babylon, they had found new partners. The planet's native predators were called shadow cats, creatures the size of earth tigers, but with natural camouflage that made them nearly invisible. The colonists had spent years learning to work with these dangerous animals. Shadow cats were intelligent enough to understand complex commands and aggressive enough to take on any threat. Most importantly, they could move through the city's ventilation systems and underground passages like living ghosts. The first Krillian to encounter a shadow cat was a scout moving through an abandoned office building. He heard a soft sound behind him and turned just in time to see death approaching. The cat's claws could tear through Krillian armor like paper, and its bite was strong enough to crush bone. The scout's scream echoed through the building before being abruptly cut short. Soon, similar encounters were happening throughout the city. The Krillians found themselves hunted by enemies they couldn't see or predict. Every shadow could hide a waiting predator. Every sound could be the last thing they heard. Captain Veltar tried to maintain order among increasingly panicked troops. "Form up! Stay together! Watch each other's backs!" But discipline was breaking down. These were warriors accustomed to facing their enemies in honest battle, not being stalked through a maze of concrete and steel by invisible killers. Some of the younger soldiers had started firing at shadows, wasting ammunition and betraying their positions to human observers. From his command post, Zethkar watched his forces disintegrate. In 6 hours of fighting, he had lost nearly a third of his ground troops without inflicting a single confirmed casualty on the enemy. This was impossible. Humans were supposed to be soft, weak creatures who surrendered when faced with superior force. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving transmission requests from several other colony worlds. Should I accept?" Zethkar nodded, expecting to hear reports of successful conquests from his other battle groups. Instead, the screens filled with images of burning Krillian ships and panicked fleet commanders. "War Commander, we need immediate reinforcements at Kepler Colony. The humans have somehow commandeered our own orbital platforms and are using them against us." "Sir, New Terra is a complete disaster. The entire civilian population appears to be armed and trained for combat. We've lost 7 ships just trying to establish a landing zone." "Command, recommend immediate withdrawal from Epsilon Station. The humans have turned the asteroid mining facilities into weapons. They're launching rocks at our fleet at relativistic speeds." The reports continued, each one more impossible than the last. Every single invasion had encountered the same thing. Humans who refused to behave like conquered people should behave. Instead of surrendering, they had turned their entire civilization into a weapon. Zethkar closed the communications channel and stared at the tactical display. The situation was beyond salvage. His mighty invasion force was being destroyed piecemeal by an enemy that fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. "Sir?" Veltar asked quietly. "Your orders?" Before Zethkar could respond, his communicator chimed with an incoming transmission. The holographic image that appeared was not one of his own officers, but a human. A scarred man in military fatigues with cold blue eyes that seemed to look directly into the war commander's soul. "You must be Zethkar," the human said calmly. "I'm Colonel Jake Sullivan, commanding human forces on New Babylon. I thought we should talk." Zethkar's mandibles clicked in anger. "You dare contact me directly? I should have you executed for your impudence." Sullivan's expression didn't change. "You're welcome to try. But first, let me explain your current situation. You've lost approximately 37% of your ground forces. Your orbital support has been cut off by debris fields my people created around your ships. Your retreat route is blocked, and you're surrounded by 2 million very angry humans who know this terrain better than you ever will." The accuracy of Sullivan's assessment was shocking. How could the humans have such precise intelligence about Krillian losses? "What do you want?" Zethkar demanded. "I want you to understand something," Sullivan replied. "You came here expecting to fight soldiers, but on New Babylon, everyone is a soldier. The woman who makes your breakfast is trained in close-quarters combat. The man who repairs your vehicles knows how to build bombs. The children playing in the streets can field strip a rifle blindfolded." Sullivan paused, letting the words sink in. "You want to know why? Because humans have been preparing for this day since we first learned about species like yours. We've studied every conquest you've ever made, learned from every mistake other civilizations made when facing you." Zethkar felt a chill that had nothing to do with the planet's temperature. Impossible. No species could maintain that level of military preparation among civilians. "You're thinking like a Krillian," Sullivan said. "You see military training as something separate from daily life. But humans? We've been fighting for survival since we crawled out of caves on Earth. Every generation of humans grows up knowing that someday something bigger and stronger might try to wipe us out. So we prepare." The human leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Your mistake was thinking this would be a conventional war, but humans don't fight conventional wars when our survival is at stake. We fight to win, no matter what it takes." Zethkar was about to respond when explosions began erupting around his position. His remaining forces scattered as human fighters emerged from positions they had held for hours, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "This is your only warning," Sullivan's voice continued over the chaos. "Withdraw your forces now, leave our worlds, and never return. If you don't, we'll show you what total war really means." The transmission ended, leaving Zethkar alone with the sound of his army being systematically destroyed. For the first time in his military career, the war commander of the Krillian Dominion felt something he had never experienced before: fear. Not fear of death in battle, which would have been honorable, but fear of an enemy that fought without honor, without rules, without any limitation except their own survival. An enemy that turned every aspect of their civilization into a weapon. As another explosion rocked his command post, Zethkar realized that he wasn't just losing a battle. He was witnessing the birth of something new and terrible in galactic warfare, something that would change the balance of power forever. The humans had been pushed to the edge, and they were pushing back with everything they had. The Krillian's expression shifted to one of disbelief, then rage. "You dare defy the might of the Dominion? Your arrogance will cost you everything." "We'll see about that," Sarah replied. "But I want you to remember something, War Commander. You started this war. Whatever happens next, that's on you." The transmission cut out, leaving Sarah alone in the chamber. She had just condemned humanity to a war they couldn't win through conventional means. But humans had never been conventional. They were survivors, adapters, fighters who refused to stay down no matter how hard they were hit. The galaxy was about to learn what that really meant. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in chaos. Representatives from a dozen species filled the great chamber, their voices raised in heated debate as holographic displays showed the unfolding disaster across Krillian space. The images were almost impossible to believe. Ambassador Telvanni of the peaceful Zelari delegation stared at the tactical screens in horror. 17 Krillian core worlds under siege simultaneously? How is this possible? The Krillian representative, General Caxtor, stood rigid at his species' podium. His scaled hide was pale with shock, and his 4 arms trembled as he spoke. "The humans have committed acts of unprecedented barbarism. They strike from shadows, target civilians, and show no respect for the traditional rules of warfare. From across the chamber, Ambassador Sarah Chen stepped forward. The human representative looked remarkably calm given the accusations being hurled at her species. General Caxtor seems to have forgotten that his war commander Zeth Kar declared war on us first. He threatened to exterminate our colonies and civilian populations. We simply responded in kind. The hegemony's eldest member, Counselor Vrakthan, activated his speaking platform. The ancient being's voice carried the weight of centuries as he addressed the assembly. The human's actions violate every established principle of civilized warfare. Military targets, designated battlefields, formal declarations of victory or surrender, these concepts appear meaningless to them. Sarah smiled coldly. Perhaps your civilized warfare works when the stakes are territory or trade rights. But when someone threatens to genocide our species, we tend to take a more practical approach. The debate was interrupted as urgent updates flowed in from the battlefront. A communications officer rushed to Counselor Vrakthan's side, whispering frantically in his ear. The ancient being's expression grew increasingly disturbed as he listened. The humans have just concluded what they call Operation Hometown, Vrakthan announced to the stunned assembly. They have simultaneously infiltrated the capital cities of 17 Krillian worlds and detonated fusion devices in government districts. The chamber erupted in shocked gasps. General Caxtor's legs gave out, and he collapsed into his chair. That's impossible. Our worlds have planetary defense systems, orbital monitors, security forces. Had, Sarah corrected. Past tense, your security forces are currently dealing with more immediate problems, like trying to figure out which of their own personnel are actually human infiltrators. The truth was even more shocking than the Council realized. For over 20 years, humans had been quietly seeding Krillian space with long-term operatives, not spies in the traditional sense, but volunteers who underwent extensive genetic and surgical modification to appear as other species. They had built lives, families, and careers on enemy worlds, waiting for the day they might be needed. When that day came, they activated with devastating efficiency. On Krillos Prime, the Krillian homeworld, Dr. Yevtani had been a respected xenobiologist for 15 years. Her colleagues knew her as a brilliant researcher who had made groundbreaking discoveries about interspecies genetics. What they didn't know was that she was actually Dr. Jennifer Walsh from Earth, and that her research had been carefully designed to map Krillian vulnerabilities. When the activation signal reached her, Jennifer calmly finished her morning tea, kissed her Krillian husband goodbye, and walked to the research facility where she worked. The bioweapon she released was her own creation, specifically tailored to Krillian physiology. It would cause severe illness but not death, overwhelming medical facilities and creating panic without crossing the line into genocide. Similar scenarios played out across Krillian space. Human operatives emerged from deep cover to strike at infrastructure, communications, and supply lines. They didn't target civilian populations for elimination, but they made normal life impossible. Back in the council chamber, General Caxtor struggled to maintain his composure. This is biological warfare, chemical attacks. These humans are monsters. Sarah's expression hardened. Your war commander threatened to purge our colonies. That was his exact word. Purge. As in, exterminate every man, woman, and child. You want to call us monsters? Look in a mirror. The Zalari ambassador raised a tentacle for attention. Ambassador Chen? Surely there must be some way to end this conflict peacefully. The destruction on both sides. There's been no destruction on our sides, Sarah pointed out. Every human world you've attacked is still in our hands. Every human civilian threatened by your forces is alive and well. Can your ally say the same about his people? The assembled representatives turned to look at the tactical displays. The truth was undeniable. In 3 weeks of warfare, the Krillians had failed to capture a single human world, while 17 of their own planets were in chaos. But the real shock came when the next intelligence report arrived. A young aide rushed into the chamber and whispered urgently to Counselor Vrachthen. The ancient being's reaction was immediate and visceral. His species' equivalent of skin went dead white. "What is it?" demanded the hegemony military representative. "The humans have just executed what they call Phase 3, Vrachthen announced, his voice barely above a whisper. They have somehow acquired detailed intelligence on every Krillian military installation, research facility, and command structure in the sector, and they are using this information to conduct what they term decapitation strikes. The explanation that followed revealed the true scope of human preparation. For decades, human intelligence services had been mapping Krillian space with obsessive detail. Every military base, every research facility, every command bunker had been identified and cataloged. More importantly, the humans had identified the key personnel who kept the Krillian war machine functioning. Colonel Sullivan's voice came through the chamber's communication system as he coordinated the strikes from his command center. "Target package Alpha 7 is confirmed eliminated. Admiral Kreshvar's command staff has been neutralized. Proceeding to beta sequence." General Caxtor listened in horror as the roll call of destruction continued. These weren't just random attacks. The humans were systematically dismantling the Krillian military command structure with surgical precision. "How did they get this information?" he demanded. "Our security protocols are absolute." Sarah's smile was absolutely without warmth. "Your security protocols were designed to keep out conventional spies. They weren't designed to stop people who were willing to spend decades building false lives on your worlds, having families with your people, becoming part of your society." The full implications hit the assembled representatives like a physical blow. If humans could do this to the Krillians, they could do it to anyone. How many human operatives were seeded throughout galactic civilization? How many trusted advisors, respected scientists, or beloved teachers were actually human agents waiting for activation? Ambassador Telvanni's voice was barely a whisper. "How many of you are there among us?" "That," Sarah replied, "is classified information. But I will say this. Humans have been living among most of your species for longer than you might think. We're good at adapting, you see. Good at becoming whoever we need to be." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Every representative was now wondering about their own staff, their own advisors, their own friends. The paranoia would spread from here to every corner of galactic civilization. But Sarah wasn't finished. Of course, all of this could end immediately. One word from General Caxtor, and every human operative goes back to their normal lives. Your people stop dying, our people stop fighting, and everyone goes back to the status quo. General Caxtor looked up with desperate hope. "What word?" "Surrender," Sarah said simply. "Complete and unconditional surrender. Withdraw all Krillian forces from human space. Formally apologize for the threat of genocide, and pay reparations for the military expenses we've incurred in defending ourselves." The Krillian general's hope transformed into rage. "Impossible! The Krillian Dominion has never surrendered to anyone." "Then your people will continue dying," Sarah replied with cold finality. "Because this war doesn't end until either you surrender or your civilization collapses. Those are your only options." To emphasize her point, Sarah activated a personal communication device. "Colonel Sullivan, please give the Council a demonstration of human capabilities." On the main display screen, the view switched to show a Krillian military installation on a distant world. The facility was massive, protected by energy shields and automated defense systems. As the Council watched, the installation simply vanished in a flash of brilliant light. "Antimatter charges," Sarah explained casually, "delivered by operatives who have been working at that facility for 12 years. We have similar packages positioned at 1,732 other high-value targets across Krillian space." The number was staggering. Every major Krillian military installation in the sector was apparently under threat. General Caxtor realized that his species' military superiority had been an illusion. While they had been building bigger ships and more powerful weapons, humans had been building something far more dangerous, a network of operatives who could strike anywhere, anytime. Counselor Vrak then spoke into the stunned silence. Ambassador Chen, what assurances can you give that humanity will not use these same methods against other species? Sarah considered the question seriously. As long as other species don't threaten to commit genocide against human civilians, they have nothing to fear from us. We didn't ask for this war. We didn't want to reveal these capabilities. But we will defend ourselves against any threat, using any means necessary. The session was interrupted by the arrival of an unexpected figure. War Commander Zethkar himself appeared on the communication screen, his proud bearing replaced by obvious exhaustion and defeat. His armor was scorched and dented, and one of his 4 arms hung uselessly at his side. General Caxtor, Zethkar said, his voice heavy with shame. I must report total mission failure. Human colonies cannot be conquered by conventional means. Their entire population fights with a coordination and ruthlessness that defies military logic. General Caxtor's expression crumbled. What are you saying? I am saying that we cannot win this war, Zethkar replied. The humans do not fight like any enemy we have encountered. They do not distinguish between military and civilian roles. Every human is a potential combatant, every building a potential fortress, every peaceful settlement a potential base of operations. Zethkar paused, struggling with words that had never before passed his lips. Sir, I formally recommend complete withdrawal from human space and immediate negotiation for peace terms. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. The Krillian Dominion's greatest war leader was publicly admitting defeat. This was unprecedented in galactic history. Sarah stepped forward again, her voice cutting through the chaos. Let me be very clear about something. This war can end right now. Withdraw your forces, acknowledge our sovereignty over our colonies, and we'll call off our operatives. Continue fighting, and we'll systematically dismantle your civilization piece by piece. She looked directly at General Caxtor. Your choice. The Krillian general looked around the chamber, seeing fear and uncertainty in the faces of representatives from species that had once considered his people invincible. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted in the space of 3 weeks, and everyone knew it. With visible effort, General Caxtor stood and faced the human ambassador. On behalf of the Krillian Dominion, I formally request terms for cessation of hostilities. Sarah nodded once. Accepted. Terms are as follows. Complete withdrawal of all Krillian forces from human space within 72 hours. Formal recognition of human sovereignty over all current colonies. Payment of war reparations equal to our military expenses. And most importantly, a guarantee that no Krillian force will ever again threaten human civilians. And in return, your world stops burning. Your people go back to their normal lives, and humanity goes back to being peaceful neighbors who want nothing more than to explore the galaxy and raise our families. Sarah paused, then added with a slight smile, Of course, now you know what happens if anyone threatens those families. The vote was unanimous. Even species that had been allied with the Krillians supported the peace terms. The message was clear. No one wanted to face what the Krillians had experienced. As the council session concluded, Ambassador Telvanni approached Sarah privately. Your species has changed everything. The galaxy will never feel safe again. Sarah's expression softened slightly. That wasn't our goal. We just wanted to be left alone to live our lives. But if teaching the galaxy to respect human civilians is the price of peace, we're willing to pay it. Looking out at the stars beyond the council chamber, Sarah reflected on what had transpired. Humanity had never wanted to become the galaxy's nightmare. But when pushed to the edge, they had shown that they would do absolutely anything to survive. The galaxy would remember this lesson for a very long time. In the end, the war that was supposed to last years was over in 3 weeks, not because humanity was conquered, but because they had proven that conquering them was impossible. They had turned their entire civilization into a weapon, and that weapon was pointed at anyone foolish enough to threaten their existence. The Krillian Dominion withdrew to lick its wounds and contemplate a universe where humans walked among every species, unseen and undetected, waiting. Other civilizations began looking at their human neighbors with new respect and perhaps a little fear. And in his command bunker on New Babylon, Colonel Jake Sullivan finally allowed himself a small smile as he filed his final report. The mission was complete. Humanity's children could continue growing up on distant worlds, safe in the knowledge that anyone who threatened them would face the wrath of a species that had never learned how to quit. The galaxy had learned what happened when you declared war on humanity. It was a lesson that would not be forgotten.